All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Excellent. Very glad you're here. It's amazing. It actually is. The moment you click the button, it goes live. So some of you will be watching me doing nothing. But I don't know about it until 15 seconds later. So if you're here watching and I see people are beginning to join, please type into the chat where you are. Just say hello. It's always very wonderful for me to see all the different people from around the world joining in. And I'm assuming you can all hear me okay. If my lips are moving, but you're not hearing anything. Hi, Barbara. Is that my friend Barbara from Sandpoint, Idaho? Hi, Juan. Hello. Good to see you all joining. Wonderful. It's very fun to. Please let me know where you are. Hola from Mexico. Hi, Johanna. Very, very good to see you. Brian in Virginia. Oh, Virginia Beach today. Brian, is that? How are you doing? My good friend. It's been listening to me since the original Conversations with G program, which I think is now like 8-9 years ago. I started that. Emiliano from Sweden. Oh, Juan is in the Dominican. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. Chrissy's here from New Zealand. So good afternoon, everyone. And for some, it's like Chrissy in New Zealand, but in Australia, that's morning as it is on the west coast of the United States. And it's later in the evening for those in Europe, like Emiliano from Sweden. Jill is from Boston. Mahamea is from Croatia. Hi there, Maja or Maha? Oh boy. Grundlegende Verenderungen. Dutch word. Brother from Hamburg. Hi there. Can I call you Grundy or Grundle? Yes, and here's Barbara from Sweden. You're not hearing anything? Nobody's hearing sound? Let me check the, please make sure. Testing on the sound. Yeah, I think it appears to be working. Anybody else? No sound, Barbara is saying. Hello from Minnesota. Judy is in Florida. Patricia from Texas. Hello, Patricia. Wonderful. Mira is from Russia. Wow. Barbara Russell. Yes, it is. Thank you for a wonderful retreat experience in Victoria, BC. You're truly a master teacher. Thank you very much. Yes, Barbara was in the live retreat that I did last week. Daniela, who is in Slovakia. Maya is how I pronounce it. Very good. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, the sound is good. I hear you. Got sound. We have sound. Sound is fine. Good. Shanika is from England. Sound is good from John David. Well, wow. People are beginning to join in. Welcome to Satsang, everyone. This is the opportunity for us to all get together. And last weekend, I spent at the Krishnamurti Education Center in Victoria, BC, which was, such a, oh my goodness, I mean, it's hard to describe how wonderful a place it is. And what an experience to be standing in the shoes as big as those that belong to J. Krishnamurti. Monica is here from Italy. Wonderful. Yeah, Juan is saying so many different places. Isn't it wonderful? It's absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful retreat center. Had two huge picture windows that overlook this wonderful lawn, and then it dipped down to the ocean with trees. It was just a spectacular place. Helen is here from Spain. Brian, we are getting old. Yeah, it happens, my friend. It happens. But it was, I just thought of it because as we get together for satsang, Krishnamurti never stopped talking, but, and for our perception, he never stopped teaching. But what he said was, you don't need a teacher. And remember, in his history, originally, he was kind of adopted by the Theosophical Society as the world teacher. And he was, really prestigious, well known, as a big deal. And he just decided one day, when it was his late 20s, because this was like a big, he had kind of been selected as, the teacher for the new millennia. And he said, I'm not doing this anymore. There's no world teacher. Everybody's their own teacher. And that's the way it is. And he completely dropped out from it. He's written a lot of books. He's done a lot of speaking, but he would always invite the audience. He never called it satsang, as far as I know. I don't remember him using that word, at least not regularly. And Space Frog Dig Baby is here from Scotland. Good to have you. Thank you. But he always said that we're getting together to explore together. We are here in a group to explore the deepest questions about life and meaning and purpose and significance and consciousness and where we're headed and the state that the world is in, much of which happening right now, he foresaw 50, 60, 70 years ago. So I'm in that spirit, I want to approach the what we're doing here today, so that we understand that this isn't, we're not here to collect new thoughts. We're not here to, to latch on to new ideas that can become beliefs. We're not here to just kind of have a cappuccino awakening, as Mooji would like to refer to it, but to truly discover at the depths of our soul what is actually real. The world, as we imagine it to be, is a cultural illusion. It is a cultural hallucination. Not only were we conditioned as children into certain kinds of behaviors and actions and attitudes by our parents, they actually represented a larger view of things, the view of culture as a whole. And so we have a cultural identity. You could call it a cultural ego, a cultural view of things that we have inherited. We've taken it in, we act it out, and we think it's actually real. There's an entire view of what the world is and what it's like and how it functions. And I would just like to quote Jesus, who said, by their fruit you shall know them. If our view of the world was just so adequate or so accurate, why is it that it's producing such a huge mess, such huge discrepancy in wealth and in poverty, the exploitation of the planet, a complete and total disconnection from each other, from the planet, from nature as a whole, and we do it at our own peril. When I was in Victoria, that area of the world, and hello Casavalas from India, that part of the world has some very unique trees that are only there, the arbutus and the Giri oak, which I'd never actually seen in person before. But it's mostly old growth forest. And I spent a lot of time just sitting there, soaking up the energy of this extremely unique place, and the unique energy and the kind of the beingness of nature, which, being as a kid raised basically in the suburbs of Chicago, there wasn't a lot of connection to nature. We'd go to the forest preserve that was nearby my house, and to drink beer and try to meet girls. It was not there was not a connection to nature. And I think we're experiencing, you could call it an archaic revival. Hey, Gert John from Holland. Hey, very, very good to have you here. And by archaic, I don't mean like, antiquated or out of date. I mean a reaching back to previous times. Um, it, this happened. This has happened before. After the fall of the Roman Empire, we went into the Dark Ages and then the Middle Ages. When the Renaissance began to happen, and there was some intellectual freedom and some artistic curiosity, again, they reached back to a model that had worked before. And the Renaissance people went all the way back to the Greeks. And hence, modern scientific thought and the modern perspective of things is based on the Greek view of the world, of the split of subject and object, and classical analysis. And modern science is really kind of taken that to the nth degree. Well, we're experiencing exactly the same thing. We are witnessing the collapse of an empire, but not just an empire of one particular country. The U.S. is the big empire in the world right now, but it's a child of this Renaissance, of the Enlightenment, of this intellectual materialistic approach that really had its birth in Europe. And so those of us who are really discontent and feeling the pain of this collapse of cultural value, all the things we were taught, that we acted out, that we invested in, only to find out that they don't work, and they're not really serving us anymore. There's an enormous gap that gets created. There's enormous disorientation that takes place, and so we're reaching back. We're reaching back into the teaching. I mean, I teach. The Advaita Vedanta that we talk about here, or Zen, is ancient. I mean, it goes back 2,600 years to the Buddha. Advaita Vedanta goes back even further than that, all the way to the Vedas. Maybe 6,000 years, 1,000 years ago, maybe more. And it's a completely different approach to life. It is approach where the subject object split doesn't exist. And this sounds very difficult because we're so enculturated into our view of things that the idea that it's not a subject object split, that me and everything I perceive are in fact one, is completely novel and quite revolutionary to our way of thinking. So. But in addition to that, it isn't just an intellectual revival of the archaic that's happening. It's also an emotional one. It's one of the heart, a reconnection. There's so much interest now in shamanic practices, in Aboriginal cultures, in all sorts of the Mayans and the Incas and all sorts of other cultures as well that became very, very sophisticated. And at its root, there is a need for us to have a new story of our culture, a new way of looking at ourselves, a new way of interacting with others, because this one is absolutely not working. I think we all know that. And my idea, and what I hope to do through satsangs like this is for us to explore things on both a personal level and on a cultural level of the whole, because you can't separate us. You can't. Culture isn't a thing. It is simply the collective beliefs and attitudes and common assumptions, a common story of all of us. As that shifts and changes, the entire consciousness and the culture that expresses it is going to change it as well. This has happened throughout history, but I think what's unique about this day and age is never before has it ever been on a global scale. Never has it been touching every man, woman, and child on the planet. Not even man, woman, child, it's touching every bug, every mosquito, every plant, every rock. The entire population of the earth, animal, mineral, vegetable, and human, is feeling the impact of this cultural shift that we're going through. because we have now gotten to the point that where our cultures, our actions, our beliefs affect the entire planet. We have become a force of nature, but without yet realizing the wisdom that it takes in order to utilize that power that we have. I mean, we've actually harnessed. I mean, Icarus would be proud of us that we harnessed the energy of the splitting of the atom. And what did we do? We heaped rains of fire upon our enemy. We need a story and a set of values and an outlook that match our capacity to manipulate matter to our will. We need an enlightened will to know what to do with that. So that's just kind of a little prelude. This has been on my mind lately. But let's see. Sarah says hi. Klesu says hi. Hi from France from Sarah. Vicky from England. Welcome everybody. I'm so glad to have you here. SS said, yesterday I was seeing how what all experience is thoughts, but actually my experience is right here, which is not my thoughts, but they appear to be real. As this continues, the body is here, but the mind is discontent with all other things it thinks are better to do or something. Yes, that's absolutely accurate. And one of the things I love about this way of approaching things is it is direct. One of the things I think is extremely significant about moving, about where we're headed, where I believe consciousness is headed in this new story that is developing, is that it is a story of personal empowerment. We've had hundreds of years now, probably thousands of years of having, the priest caste or the merchant class, these other authorities that everybody deferred to. I mean, for the longest time, the scriptures, the Bible, which ruled people's lives, the Bible as it was created by the Roman Empire, by the way, as it rules people's lives, was completely handed to them by the priest class. This is what it meant. This is, they would quote it to them. It was even in Latin, right? So they couldn't even understand what was being said. So everything was being imposed on us and we just submitted to it. But what I see happening now that I'm really very pleased is this personal authority for my own direct experience and my confidence that my interpretation of my personal experience has validity to it. We're all scientists. We're all inner cosmonauts. Traipsing around the borders, the frontiers of consciousness. And I say that because when he said that, I see, as said yesterday, I was seeing how all experience is thoughts, but actually my experience is right here. What is experienced is thoughts, but my experience is right here, which is not my thoughts, but they appear to be real. And this is a direct experience. This is not somebody telling you that. It was looking and you saw that, yes, I'm aware of all the thoughts, but me, right here, my experiencing of them right here is not a thought. They appear to be real only because we believe them to be real, by the way. By this set of thoughts is the explanation for this particular phenomenon. We simply believe it to be true. And as you pointed out, the body is here, but the mind is discontent. Yes, that is what Buddha meant when he talked about the Four Noble Truths of suffering. There is suffering. That suffering he meant, he was referring to, was not the kind of intense anguish that we experience, when you lose a loved one or something like that. That kind of grief is not suffering he was referring to. He was talking about this discontent, that things just aren't okay the way they are, which is the essence of the experience of the egoic mind. The egoic mind its nature is discontent. Now let that sink in for a second. We think somehow we're going to be able to, retrain our mind to be happy, and it's not possible. The egoic mind, its nature is discontent. The only way to get past discontent is that we must disidentify from the egoic mind, freeing thought, intellect, creativity, and all that energy from the bondage of being contained within this very limited, very small sense of our own being. But this is the direction. The thoughts are not real in and of themselves. It's not that they're, it's all hallucination. That's not the case. It's just that they don't exist independently from you. And everything you experience is experienced right here. We interpret it as being out there because we've all been convinced that there is an out there. But when you actually look in your own direct experience, you can't find an out there. You can only find right here and a right now, which is just a mind blower to ponder. But it is such an opposite point of view to what we've normally been taught and been indoctrinated to believe, that we get, well, it must be something out there, right? We don't really have a context for processing this yet. So take your time with these insights. Trust that what you're seeing is actually true, and let it develop within you a context and a really kind of a philosophy, a spiritual perspective, and the language to construct a workable model for interacting with the world and living your life. I got an email from somebody the other day who had been really struggling. They're not able to. I think it was maybe a comment on YouTube, that they're having a hard time functioning. They're having these insights, and they're having a hard time functioning. Well, it could be the case because when you begin to wake up to the reality of your being, the old motivations begin to fall away. The discontent begins to fall away. And then there's just kind of this sense, well, what do I do now? All I could say is don't worry. Just do what needs to be done in the moment. Take care of things and let this insight grow. Let it deepen. Let it become, let it marinate. That's what the word Muji uses. Let it marinate within the system so that it little by little begins to transform you. That is, it's not transforming you. You don't need transforming. You're discovering you. But this real you is doing away with the false ideas you've had about yourself. And as a result, is going to be affecting the way you live, the way you interact with others, and really everything you do. So just be willing to do this kind of heroic, it really is a heroic inquiry, because it is so different. And it's even more heroic because you have to take upon yourself an innate authority that the culture does not want to give to you. Because, if every individual has authority, the culture ceases to have the authority. It ceases to be able to dominate you, ceases to be able to control you or manipulate you. You become a really powerful force for creating a completely different way of being in the world. So really take your time with this. There's no rush. It's why I teach. The very first thing I always teach is allowing. And I had somebody in the retreat who had, like 9 or 10 years ago, got my program, Just Allow It. And he still does it every day. He's a scientist. He's a physicist. He builds. He's an engineer. He builds equipment for studying marine mammals. A brilliant guy. And every day he's still doing the simple body awareness as his life is become gradually transformed. He went from being really the hard-nosed engineer to an engineer who discovers he has some psychic abilities, and there's a very big universe out there, way, way different, much more interesting and much more mysterious than we ever gave it credit for. So that's why I teach it first, to be present with the discontent. When we really identify that discontent as the nature of the egoic mind itself, There can be okay, how do I get rid of it? Well, that how do I get rid of it is a discontent with that, right? That's the same thing. So what you'll do is you just keep stepping back and just allowing everything to be there. And believe me, what'll happen is an equilibrium will begin to arise all by itself. And you'll find yourself just being different, just being in the world differently. The people who have been doing this the most, my longest students, say that that's what happens. A very short period of time, it's just, oh, they're just not depressed anymore. They're not struggling anymore. Things are just kind of happening, flowing very, very naturally. And that is the real thing I want to get. That's an opening and an expanding of the heart, which is the side of this that oftentimes gets ignored. And sometimes there's people, it's all about the heart and feeling and getting back to nature, and others it's all about the intellect and model and creativity and all that. And it's like, it's actually both, right? There's an opening of the heart and a sharpening of the intellect. And you put those two together and you get the most powerful, life-shifting and earth-transforming wisdom. So thanks for that, SS. Juan says, I found myself so related to your words. Oh, thank you, Juan. Wonderful. Let's see. Luca from Slovenia. My goodness, this is great. Casavadas says, is there a difference in Tantra? Tantra is, it has been reduced in the Western world, because everything in the Western world gets commoditized. It's been reduced to simply, sex techniques. But what it really is a deepening of connection. It is the way in which the non-dual insight begins to take shape in one's life. It is the merging of the divine and the human until the line just becomes blurred. And so, I mean, obviously our sexual relationships, romantic relationships are a part of that, but that's not all there is to it. How are you living your life, right? How are you interacting? How are you, what's your relationship with, this cup of tea I have? I can see it just as this perfunctory thing, or I can see it as this wonderful thing that's adding this dimension to my life and the existence of tea and the people who discovered it and the whole process they went through and the little bit of honey I get to put in it and all the different flavors that are available in this nice cup from Goose Ridge Vineyard. You can begin to see the incredible interconnection of all things, that you're not isolated. And that's the opening of the heart that is the essence of Tantra. So we can talk about oneness and we can explore oneness with a great deal of precision. But then that oneness has to actually start shaping your view of things, has to start shaping your experience. So it becomes lived and felt. So I hope that answers your question there. Kasavadas. Shanika says, once the Buddha, loving the tea, was asked by a man about the universe, and replied saying that the entire universe can be found within the human body. What exactly did he mean by that? There's many things that he said, and he always spoke at the level in which the person was speaking. The Buddha was very clear that what he taught was not an absolute that needed to become another belief that you subscribe to, but a pointer to a direction to explore. If we look at the human body, we see this incredible complex system of functions that are processing. And when you look really close, you really can't find a center to it. You break it apart and you can't find a human being in the human body. There's all sorts of these different chemicals and all sorts of different processes and organs and cells and bacteria and microorganisms and all this incredible swirling mass of things that's constantly in flux. And there's no center. There's no self in it. There's no, there's no coordinating, central processing unit. Something extremely mysterious kind of holds this whole thing together. Scientists And like our modern materialistic reductionist view of it is looking in the body itself for something that's kind of holding it together. But if you want to understand the universe, you simply look at the body. Everything functions that way. This cup is made up of just of trillions of little particles, none of which is a cup. So where does the cup come from? It is this incredibly beautiful thing that emerges out of what? It has no center. It has no self. It has no, the organizing principle isn't in it. And so the body, when you look at the human body, you see the model of everything. The emptiness that you discover in Buddhism is the emptiness of everything. It is the emptiness of self in a person, and self in dharmas, self in the universe, and and there's no self in even the teaching. No teaching is absolute. It's temporary. You know, a couple of years from now, nobody's going to be watching these satsangs. They'll be totally irrelevant, and they should be. Maybe there'll be some parts of it that'll be useful for a little bit longer than that, but it's not going to go on forever. The books I used to read a long time ago. I mean, now I've read some books by the turn of the century, and the language sounds archaic. I mean, it sounds like it's almost from a different time. It's like reading Old English. You just can't understand it. So there's not even the teachings. Our cultural views, our cultural ideals have anything solid to them. So the human body becomes then the model of everything. And then we see that the form that we actually experience doesn't actually exist in the parts, but is projected on it by the mind. And that projection, the Buddha also referred to. He talked about it a lot in the Lankavatara Sutra. So what you have is just a swirling mass of energy and structures and little forms. And then the mind projects upon this the body. This is the way the entire universe is. I hope that answers your question. Let me scroll back down here, Shanika. It is the model. It is the model of everything. K. Stott says, true. Very good. Thank you. One says, here and now is all that there is, but why does it feel not continuous? Like different moments? Yes. Well, it's very simple. I mean, if you watch a movie, it's being projected up on the screen. What you see on the screen is a series of images, right? That are just going 30 frames a second. 30 frames a second is so fast that the eye cannot detect them as separate images. And so it interprets that then as actual motion, the moving picture. That was the deal. But the screen upon which it's projected hasn't changed. It's absolutely static. It hasn't done a thing. And the same thing is true if you're watching this on, most of you are watching it on YouTube, maybe some are just listening, but if you're watching on YouTube, everything that's happening on the screen in front of you right now is being produced by the screen. Right? You don't even notice the screen because you're seeing all the information on it, but what you're looking at is the screen. It's not different from the screen. It is the screen. You could say it's the screen in its dynamic form, and yet the screen remains completely unchanged and untouched by everything that's happening. So while events pass through our sense of existence, that's where the feeling of continuity and things going on, the sense of motion. But it's felt and experienced from the immovable now, and the unchanging here. Everything is perceived from there. Everything that is perceived is just a series of moments that are taking place. The illusion is that we are somehow moving through those moments, like time is somehow a river that's carrying things along, and it's not. Time is just a word that uses to describe change. That we register the change, this changes into that, but the place from which it is being seen is changeless. and just look for yourself to confirm that. Don't turn that into a belief. Don't start talking about the eternal now as another idea. Actually explore it. And you'll see that it is the content appearing to you that's changing while you are not. It is what appearing in the now, which is permanent and eternal, is constantly changing, but the now is not. And we have just been led to believe that somehow we are a part of that flow of change, when in fact we are the now that is perceiving it. The now is just another word for the self. How's that, Juan? Let me know if that's working for you. As an answer, Lucas says, why the majority of non-dual teachers don't speak about law of attraction? Do you think that they think that it's not important, or they don't believe in it? I think it's mostly because of the emphasis. The problem with the law of attraction isn't that it's not true, that it doesn't work, but it's just not the whole story. And because it got presented in such a rudimentary way, it got presented really as the solution for the egoic mind to get what it wanted. So, I mean, if you look at the way it's talked about, it's all about, you can have, your dream house, all the money you could possibly want, live the life you've always wanted to live. And that's the way that's the way it's pitched. Well, that's appealing to the worst part of it. That's appealing to the unenlightened part of us, which is why non-dual teachers will kind of like, yes, it works, but here, let's see what's actually happening. I sometimes will teach it as the law of reflection, but the important thing is to discover that it's all a projection of your mind. So even if I say I'm attracting it, I've got this idea that this thing exists out there, and I've got to somehow do something to attract it to come into my life. That's not actually true. That isn't the actual non-dual approach to it. Now, it isn't to say the law of attraction isn't true. It does work on a particular level. You can see it that way. But when you dive more deeply into it, you see that inherent in that teaching is a sense of separation between myself and the object. The reality is that my nature is abundance. I am abundance. I am that which I seek. To find that within yourself is to find it here and now. And at that point, whether the object has appeared yet or not, it becomes irrelevant. You have all of the rich experience of happiness and joy as if it was there, and it's not, even when it's not. And that's how you become free of your attachment to what's happening circumstantially, and instead discover the universe within yourself. And at that point, it doesn't matter whether the thing comes to you or not. You already have the thing you actually wanted, which is a sense of peace, of happiness, of contentment. Then, with that established as your inner world, that peace and contentment will manifest itself in different forms. And that's the big difference. It is actually a reflection. It's actually emerging from you, not being drawn to you. And so that's why, and because of the emphasis on law of attraction being primarily the interest of the egoic mind, that's why non-dual teachers just don't want to go there. I mean, I'll take the time to go there because I think it's an important distinction, and it's had a big impact on the consciousness of today. And I personally know most of the teachers that were in the movie The Secret, and most of them believe that it was that it really was kind of a dilution of it, that there was way more to it that was not really talked about, but it was, down to the lowest common denominator. And so hopefully that answers your question, Luca, and clarifies how I teach it and how it does. There is a place for it in non-dual teaching, but you have to be very, very careful. So, Ivan, hi from Bulgaria. Wow, this is fantastic. Yeah, is the thought enlightenment is very, very rare the main hindrance for enlightenment? Not the main one. No, the main one is identification with the egoic mind. That's the main one. When they say enlightenment is very, very rare, it does seem to pop up rarely in history. But that's, yeah, but so what? I mean, I see a level of awakening in our modern world, unprecedented in all human history. So I'm pretty optimistic about the whole thing. The real question is, what is my particular path to awakening? As Buddha referred to it, as the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. And the main hindrance is simply identifying ourselves, consciousness, which is what you are, infinite, timeless, boundless consciousness, has, by identifying itself with a very small self-image, has limited itself to thinking that this body, this person, this history is what I am. That is the hindrance and nothing else. So is it rare or not? Who cares, right? I mean, it is a hindrance. Oh, it's very, very rare because it can then convince you that it's going to be hard for you, but it's not hard. And the reason it's not hard is because you kind of have, you have the leg up. You have the advantage because you are the self. You are pure consciousness. And it is simply a matter of time before you recognize that you have simply been identifying with an image of yourself that is constrained and small and limited and material and stuck and appear to have been born and going to die. And none of that is actually true. But believing it to be true has given the experience of it. So you're never anything other than the pure awakened being. That's all you ever are. But there is a sense of identification with a form that has made it feel as if you are something other than what you are. Recognizing that you're not is enlightenment. And even if you get that a little bit, just a tiny little bit, say, yeah, even if it hasn't completely sunk in, if it hasn't, completely merged with the entire energy system, it's just a matter, the days of the ego are numbered, right? It's just a matter of time. You're just kind of, just keep going, keep doing what you're doing, keep asking the questions, keep investigating, keep exploring, keep opening your heart, keep loving, keep learning, and all will be well. It is your destiny to become awakened. Juan, I think the more we talk about this and the more we inquire, the more we bring the light of consciousness to human life. They are few, but every time more. Yes, every time more. And there's 45 people watching this right now. Every one, these 45 people. But within an hour or so after, as I get through this, it usually between 100 and 200 and watching this, and watch pretty much the whole thing. So when I see that, you can say only 46. I mean, other people get thousands and thousands of views, but it's 46 people who are deeply and truthfully inquiring into the nature of their own being. That is powerful. And the more you are transformed, the more effect you're going to have on others. People are just going to look at you and say, how do you, what's going on with it? They'll feel a sense of safety emanating from you. They'll feel a sense of openness. It'll just happen because it's our nature. The nature of consciousness isn't abstract. It's the heart. It's love. It's the goddess energy. It is the openness and spaciousness. We are. It appears to be few, but it's an old saying: one with God is a majority. So I mean, to align yourself with the truth is the only thing you can possibly do. Jesus, one of the disciples, asked him and said, what's this guy going to do? And he says, don't worry about that guy. just worry about yourself. Just devote yourself to coming to know yourself as you actually are. Yes, the more we inquire, the more we bring that light of consciousness collectively, like this, or groups you might have locally, or different kinds of churches or spiritual organizations you belong to, even a yoga studio, whatever, anywhere where you bring that light is having its effect, a deeply, profoundly effect. So thanks for that question, one. Helen from Spain. What about all the buried stuff that needs releasing to free us from our ego? Till I know what it is, it always seems to be there sabotaging me until it comes to the surface. There's definitely truth in that, which is why I created inner reconciliation as a means for doing that. But I always caution people to let's not make too big a deal out of that, because the most therapeutic and salutary thing you can do is know who you are. If you know who you are, and you are really and are feeling that, the unhandled material, the buried stuff, even the deep vasanas that go from lifetime to lifetime can emerge, but they don't cause you suffering. They don't drag you back down, because you're being established in who you are. When they come up, you see them for what they are, and you meet them extremely compassionately and openly. And you let them work through the system. You let them do whatever it is they need to do. But even the deepest vasana that's gone on for 1,000 years is sustained only by our identification with it. These things can only survive in the dark. When you bring that light of consciousness to them, they are seen for what they are. And so, and the ego is simply that belief system that identifies with the vasanas and the habits and all of these things and feels bad about it and beats itself up around it. So the freedom from the ego and the freedom from this projection of our own identity on top of that is one and the same. The ego isn't a thing. The ego is simply the projection of a self on what is nothing but a bunch of functions, a bunch of things that are happening. Like I said in the very beginning, when I was talking about the formless, not very beginning, somebody's question, that the body, this thing is a collection of all sorts of different parts that are temporarily dancing together. This body is exactly the same thing, a bunch of little different piece parts that are dancing together for a period of time, sustaining themselves for a period of time, and then eventually will fall apart. When you look closely, you see that there's no self in that. There's no self in any of these things. The belief that this body is a self-aware, determining entity, that there's a self here, and it's different than the self over there, and it's different than the self over here, and it's different than the self of those plants. That is the belief of the ego, and that's where the whole thing comes from. Because the moment I believe I am this form, all of the beliefs about the form, the energy of the form, the age, the gender, and all the stuff that's been laid upon, what's possible for this age, what's possible for this gender, now becomes yours. It's like it's yours. That's the buried stuff. And seen from this light that, oh, there is no self in it. It is just a functioning. You're no longer feeding it the energy of continuity because you're no longer seeing a self in it. It's just a function. It's as if you've basically taken your foot off the gas in the car and it is now just coasting to a halt. As long as you don't put your foot back on the gas, it's going to just coast to a halt. Does that answer it for you, Helen? And yes, it can be hard when these things come up, which is why I created inner reconciliation to make it easier to do. But essentially, that's the root of it. Simply be present with it, feel it all coming up. Don't be trying to get rid of it. Don't try to throw it out. Oh, it's the ego. I have to somehow do away with it. Don't even call it self-sabotaging. It's simply a defensive mechanism within the system that will drop its defense the moment it sees that it's safe to do so. And that's really what inner reconciliation is all about. You just drop your argument with everything. And then everything, because nothing has to fight anymore, it begins to relax, it begins to loosen up. And all the energy that was in a defensive posture starts to move towards creative expression. And of course, that's where life begins to really flower and grow. So does that help you, Helen? Vicky, having a desire but not coming to fruition. And even though I'm staying positive and do the best I can, still everything seems stagnant. Is this the resistance of the universe telling me something? It's not the resistance of the universe. Yeah, the universe is just flowing just fine. It's our own resistance. Working with desires is very interesting and very useful. And the most important thing about it is to completely let go of our preference for whether that desire comes to fruition or not. The moment I have an interest and I want it to come to fruition, I've engaged the ego, I've engaged myself in it. And now I've created a conflict. It's not happening. How is it going to do more? And the moment that happens, then I start analyzing myself. Is it resistant? Is the universe resistant? Is it trying to tell me something? But all of it's coming from the fact that you simply aren't letting the desire do whatever it was meant to do. It's not up to you to do anything with the desire except allow it to be there. Some desires, once you really allow them to be there, just disappear because they really didn't have much substance to them. Others will stay for a lifetime, and they will eventually fulfill themselves. But our attachment to their fulfillment actually gets in the way of it. And it seems paradoxical, but things manifest when you get to the point where it doesn't matter whether they manifest or not. Because at the heart of every desire is a sense of lacking of happiness. I'm not happy. I want something to be more happy, to be more content, to feel more safe. The real meaning of spirituality is, in even the best teachings about the law of attraction, is to discover that happiness and contentment within yourself, completely independent of the circumstances. So the circumstances no longer matter, because now you actually already have what you've been seeking. Then what manifests is the presence of those qualities rather than the belief in the lack of them, of trying to acquire them, which then on a very subtle level, what it means you're doing is you're manifesting lack. The only way to not manifest lack is to find the actual quality in you right now. As long as you think it's out there and you have to get it, you are laboring under the label, in the dimension of lack. And yes, you may temporarily raise your vibration and things may come to you, but it won't be sustained. It must be found within. Whatever you're desiring, take the desire and go, okay, the desire is for something. Start breaking it down into the innate qualities that it has. I want a car. Okay. So it's utility, it's freedom, it's enjoyment, it's maybe luxury. Just break down into those qualities of freedom, enjoyment, happiness, contentment, safety, utility, and just find the qualities of happiness and safety and utility and beauty in yourself, because that is the substance of what gets made manifest in the world. Is that clear, Vicky? Casavada says, oops, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Luca, I noticed that in the path of self-discovery, my memory is not so good anymore. Have you experienced this? Yes. I used to remember everything. Now I don't remember anything. The things just come to me that need to come to me in the moment. It's really that simple. I do not know what my next thought is going to be. I do not know what the next thing I'm going to say is. And if you ever watched yourself in just a normal conversation with people, you realize you don't either. It's not like there's this catalog of words that you begin reciting. It's all happening very, very spontaneously. And so in that sense, you don't even need memory. We only think we need memory because we think we're not gonna have what we need every moment. But you do, and you are. And if something comes that happens to look like a memory, fine. If it doesn't, fine. But without that, this moment can become fresh. It can become totally new. Everything becomes a clean slate. And sure, you'll use the same colors from the past, but the painting's just going to constantly be changing. So I hope that puts you at rest. It's not a problem. I don't remember nearly as much as I used to, and yet at the same time, if I try to make myself remember, I can't have access to it. When I did this retreat, it's 3 days. I mean, it was a long time. It was like 2.5 hours Friday night, 3 sessions on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. So it was a long period of time, and I made an outline of the things that I wanted to cover. And I started listening to some of my old material and what did I want to say in this? And I was trying to remember stuff. And eventually I just let it go. And I didn't even have a copy of the outline with me. I had to ask somebody for it. And it found that I covered everything that I was covering, but it all came in its own order. I remembered things that I had forgotten. Stories came to mind that I hadn't told. And so it happened very spontaneously in the moment. I didn't need to remember it or practice or rehearse it. It just happened. And folks, really, again, take your own authority on this. Look at your own life, your own experience when you're having a conversation with someone. You don't know what your next thought's going to be. You don't know which direction the conversation is going to go. That's one of the amazing things about having an in-depth conversation with somebody. It just goes. And, I'll be thinking, an idea of something that I want to bring up. And then, if 5 seconds later, as the conversation person I'm talking to keeps going, it's gone, right? And I'm completely different thing. I mean, there's just no control over the flow, and I don't want any. So don't worry. Your memory is there as you need it, and you're just discovering you don't need as much of it as you thought you did. Lucas says, thank you. You're welcome. Maya, can you explain more detail worldview Drishti Shrishti Vada as opposed to the worldview Shristi Drishti Vada, which actually represents our contemporary materialistic worldview? Maya, you have hit it on the head. Oh, she said more. For instance, if I'm informed by a neighbor that my cottage by the lake was damaged, does the damaged cottage really exist before I get there to witness it? When you're looking on a practical everyday level, right? Let's see. I'll use this example. If you took physics in high school or maybe college, the laws of physics, is sent down by Sir Isaac Newton, are still taught. They're still applied. They still work. They're true. But what isn't true about them, and Newton simply did not realize, is he saw the whole universe as this big functioning like clock, this mechanical thing. Had no concept of like space-time continuum. It was Einstein who came and completely changed the whole picture of it and showed that yes, Newtonian physics work, but not everywhere. That is, they break down when you start looking at it at the speed of light and time being, and because of the speed of light, it's not all happening simultaneously. What we see as the star in the sky is actually light that left. That star might not even be there anymore. But that didn't throw out Newtonian physics. It just put it within a context. So the question is my damaged cottage that really exists before I get there to witness it isn't as important, because when you get there, you're going to have that experience. We don't want to take something as powerful and as mind-blowing as Drishti Shrishti Vada, which simply means unless something is nothing exists until it is perceived, as opposed to it exists and then it is perceived, which is the Western materialism. There's not existing until it is perceived. What we really want to get at is not a different way of trying to interact in the world, but trying to understand the substance of the universe. The substance of the universe is your knowing of it. But this can become just a philosophical nightmare, really, and a spiritual bypass, unless it's really seen as an existential quest, because this applies to you too. You don't exist until you are perceived. That is, what you know of yourself is nothing but a perception. I cannot... Consciousness is expanded to the point, and science has been instrumental in this, that we know that this cup is made up of a bunch of little particles. Now, if we zoomed down to the realm of those particles, there would be no cup. The cup simply does not exist. We would just see all of these different particles dancing in space. And each of those particles, the molecules, we can zoom in closer, and at the realm of the atom, the molecule does not exist. So a thing only comes into existence when I perceive it as a thing. So at our normal level of consciousness, the normal level of consciousness that we are stuck in, we don't see molecules and atoms and stuff buzzing around. We see forms. But this form could be part of something even bigger, and we'd have no idea. We could be sitting on an atom in some other alternate universe, and we would have no idea about it. The only thing we know for sure is our own existence. And so when they say, Drishti Shrishti Vada, nothing exists until it is perceived, this is literally true. You can see that the object that we see is a projection of the mind. And that if you try to find its actual existence, you can't. You just keep taking it apart, and there's less and less and less and less until there's nothing at all. And they've taken it all the way down to the bottom, and they cannot find anything. This mysterious substance from which all is made has just never been found. So when Buddha was asked questions like that, he would oftentimes refuse to answer or not answer at all. And people get upset about that. I'm not quite as harsh as he is. But the point is this: whether your cottage by the lake, a damaged cottage by the lake exists as an entity somewhere before you perceive it, or it comes into existence when you're perceiving it, that does not cause any degree of suffering. Suffering is the key, right? Is it causing suffering? That's where inquiry needs to go. And so when we're looking at the nature of perception, the only thing I would care about is how much suffering is your damaged cottage causing you. Now I've got something I can work with. That's important. Now we can look at the projection of my happiness, my joy, my experience on the cottage, and see that it's not actually in the cottage. It is being projected on it. And so that cottage, as it means something to me, is purely my perception and nothing else. Without that, it means nothing. If somebody else's cottage is damaged, it's like, oh, gee, that's too bad. No effect whatsoever. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is clear. The difference is simply my perception of it, my relationship to it, my identification with it. And that's when it becomes important. That's when something like nothing exists until it's perceived becomes something for the heart and not just something to engage the mind. Look at the quality of your experience, and that is where we want to put the attention. We're here to eliminate suffering, not to just kind of chew over nice philosophical ideas. And so from that perspective, it's like, what's the meaning of that to you? And you can see clearly that the meaning of that object is completely up to you. And it will either cause you suffering or it'll be freedom, completely dependent upon how you perceive it. Does that help you, Maya? It's very, very powerful. And I really want to thank you for asking that question, because it is a very deep question. And you are absolutely right. The materialism of the West, the reductionism, scientific reductionism, is the absolute conviction that everything exists whether I perceive it or not. And hence the naming of this substance out of which everything is made, outside of my perception, is matter. And the nature of everything is only discovered when you take the thing apart and finally get to its component parts, which they've been doing now for 3,000 years and have yet to find this essential ingredient. So Drishti Shrishti Vada is a beautiful antidote to that, which begins to bring the attention back to the nature of perceiving itself, to see that how I interpret what I perceive is what's going to create a life of joy and happiness, or is going to create a life of misery and suffering. And there's where the rubber really meets the road. It's only 2 o'clock. We're good. Yeah. Or 5 o'clock on the East Coast. Shanika says, thank you, GP, for the beautiful answer. And also, I have listened to so many satsang, but none as clear as you. Love all your videos. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I feel very blessed to have had the experience of life that I have had, the long time it took me to actually come to see what I'm sharing with you all, which allowed me to just experience all sorts of different ways of looking at the world and have different modes with which I can communicate it, and find the words that just really bring it home clearly, but not just clearly intellectually, but clearly from the heart. That was an aspect of it that for me was missing for many, many years, probably for up until maybe the last 15 years, 20 years. Maybe, yeah, around the late 90s, when it really became more about the opening of the heart and not the intellect. I thought it was just you think this stuff and it'll all work and you'll finally get it. And I was just really confused as to why I wasn't. But that's when I began to discover something in me just started really opening up. And so it became about touching the heart. So this was a felt truth and not just a thought truth. But all of the intellectual stuff I'd done, it served me very well to be very precise, to be able to speak to different states of mind. So I'm glad it's working. I'm glad it is very clear for you, because that means a lot to me. That means I'm doing something right. So thank you. Salaya Rose, beautiful name. Maybe Celia, but how can one stop recreating certain negative patterns from the past and shift to better realities? Well, the short answer is completely and totally accept it exactly the way it is, without any attempt or agenda to change it. That seems counterintuitive. And just at the I was doing some energy work with people in the retreat, and somebody was even saying, well, doesn't that make it stick? We keep talking about the negative stuff, and no, actually it doesn't. It's just simply, it's simply a willingness to be with what is here without resistance. When there's no resistance, there's no conflict. And the negative patterns are held in place by conflict. So when you say, I got to get rid of a negative pattern, you have just started a fight with it. And that pattern, which is itself nothing but a defensive posture that it took a long time ago, gets deeper, entrenches itself more deeply in the pattern because it feels threatened. But when you show up and say, you know what, it's okay that you're here. Fine. Negative pattern, you're affecting me aversely. I get it. I know what you're here for. You're trying to protect me. What can I say? Thank you. Wonderful. You have my complete and total approval to just keep doing it. You have just taken away everything that it needs to defend itself against. You have literally stepped into this role of being unconditional love and acceptance. And of course, the absence of unconditional love and acceptance is what created our traumas in the first place. We were not accepted for who we were. And as a result, because we couldn't be that, these other patterns came out, which are not us, other behaviors. The energy that was us got pushed to the side. It wasn't allowed to come out and express itself. It even became dangerous. And all of a sudden now, these patterns are in place. We get further along in our life. We want to try to improve and grow, and we find we can't because of these negative patterns, but then we start fighting them instead of understanding them. If we understand what they actually are, you can completely accept them just the way they are. You can embrace them. You can see them as innocent. You can see them as just being a natural function of life, and you stop fighting with them. You become their friend. You become their ally, and those patterns themselves can begin to dissolve because they're not needed anymore. And that's the real way of going about doing it. You cannot force the nervous system out of a defensive posture. You'll just make it dig in deeper. So instead, you take away all its need for defense. You just love it. There's no need for defense against unconditional love. And so you basically give yourself the unconditional acceptance that you didn't get before, and just watch what happens in the energy system. That's it. That's the whole of it. And usually when I'm training that, you just start with simple body awareness. Just feel your body without trying to change it, and just watch what happens. Helen says, thank you, Salaya. Helen says, wow, got it. Thank you. You're welcome. Good wows. Love wows. Wows are good. Wows are welcome here. Once did a little blog called, there was a simple thought called The Power of Wow. That was a catchy little title, but yeah, it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. There's just something about that, the magic of that aha moment, that insight, that opening, that is just precious. Ali says, hey, GP, I don't know if this type of question is suited for your content, but can you give me some tips on how to deal with procrastination and avoidance of work? Yeah, I can. It's the root of procrastination is there's a conflict, right? There's one side of you that says, I have to do this, and another side that says, I don't want to do that. You can't force either side. So you have to begin to allow yourself to be with the energy that doesn't want to do it. And it'll always have some reason for it. I just actually was working with somebody 2 weeks ago. A huge amount of resistance to doing something. Underneath it, we found all sorts of anger. We found a sense of powerlessness. It's not, there's not like, here's a technique, you do this and you're not going to procrastinate anymore. If you really want to be free of procrastination, you have to get to the cause of it. And in order to get to the cause of it, you have to drop the conflict. It is a strategy that has been found by your nervous system to protect you from something that unpleasant, the fear of failure, the fear of success, any number of things that it has been interpreted by the energy as being dangerous or some kind of threat to who you are. So to be honest with you, this spiritual mumbo jumbo you preach about is interesting. It really is. But as of right now, I'm more focused on my success and my purpose in life. Well, then focus on that completely. Focus on it completely. Devote yourself to it. But you'll find that you'll run up against internal walls to your success and purpose in life. And you're gonna run up against obstacles. For a lot of people really focused on success and the like, it's just, okay, how do I find a way to get through this how can I, more massive action, more techniques, more contacts, whatever. And that's one approach to it. But everyone comes to a point where they find that what they're really fighting up against is not something out here, but they're fighting against themselves. something inside them is resisting, not wanting something to happen. It's an area that needs to be explored, and I invite you to explore it. I mean, exhaust the other. You know, do a Tony Robbins seminar, and just, you know, with NLP and various kinds of techniques, you know, massive action. That's what he does. There's lots of success coaches that's their approach to it, and for some it works for a while, but I think that because you're listening to a show like this, and you maybe even done some of my programs, that you see that there's more to it than that, right? But it's okay. You know, I never tell somebody, oh, you should only want spiritual things, because I don't even know what the hell that means, right? You're going to want what you want. You know, your desires are to be honored. Your desires are to be loved, and they are to be purified and grown, not to be just denied. Oh, I shouldn't want success. Bullshit. Of course you should. If that's what you want, that's what you want. You start with what you have and what is in this moment, and what that looks for you. That's the only truth you have to work with. Otherwise, you're just pretending. I'm not trying to make spiritual people. I'm trying to make truthful people. You know, this is who you are. Pursue it 100%. If you run into a place where you realize that your success is being hindered by internal stuff and not external stuff, if you've got the techniques down, you know how to run a business, you know how to do all that stuff, and it's just not working, well, turn your attention inside and find out where is it that I have the blocks. And you've got one with procrastination and avoidance of the work. Something inside of you does not want to do it. It doesn't like being forced into it. It doesn't being told, I got to do it that way. You know, this is it. So there's an inner conflict there. So probe it to the root. Let yourself be totally present, 100% accepting of that desire and everything that's involved in it. And when you are, you'll begin to discern what in that desire for success is an escape from just being yourself, is an illusion of thinking you're going to get something from the external world that you can only get from yourself. And some of it's going to be the real desire for success that we all have, the desire to evolve and grow and make a contribution or make a lot of money, whatever it is. Please completely and totally own everything you're feeling and everything you're desiring. So hopefully that's not mumbo jumbo. I explore everything to the ultimate depth, to the existential depths of it. But that doesn't mean I can't pause anywhere along the line and deal with a common problem, a common experience, or a common issue that people are having. If the depth of spiritual inquiry isn't capable of mitigating and providing real solutions to real everyday problems, well, then it's not worth the paper or the electrons it's printed on. It's got to be a comprehensive solution, or I'm looking elsewhere, because that's what I want. I don't want something that's just, oh yeah, this is the spiritual world up here, and then here's my everyday life. They're either the same, or I'm not interested in it. They have to be the same. The most deep spirituality has to be the most functional practically. And in my experience, it is. That the dysfunction that we experience practically is really based on our perception, the way we perceive ourselves, and the way we perceive the universe, and the way and the resulting blocks and missteps and blunders that we make that grow directly out of our self-image and our view of the world. So I hope that answers you, Ali, and I hope I've said it affirmatively enough. Don't you let go of anything until you have completely plumbed it to the depths. So thank you, my friend. Very nice. Vicky says, thanks for that beautiful clarification. It makes sense. Good. Thank you, Vicky. Kamal. Hello from Canada. Hello, Kamal from Canada. Thank you for all you do, GP. You're welcome. Can you please elaborate on the role of the nervous system pertaining to your teachers? Very grateful that I found you, with lots of Y's at the end. Yeah, and I can speak to it with quite a bit of authority, because I completely missed it for the first 20 25 years of my, 30 years, 25 years of my, of my spiritual growth, because I just was, I was kind of in the, educated in the, even though my experience, my original experience that kind of put me on this path was a deep heart opening. I needed to be, I was just safe for myself. Everything I looked into after that, the spiritual traditions that I kind of partook of, were very much in the head, overcoming the body, transcending the body, and the like. And it was not until I actually grasped what the body actually was and how it worked that I began to see how you take a spiritual truth and live it as a real thing, and not just as some nice idea. So the nervous system is simply the livingness, the aliveness of the body in its incredible capacity to interact with and form relationship to the environment. So it's really that capacity, that energetic capacity. We call it the nervous system, but it's much more subtle than that. And I'll often talk about the energy system, which is basically a lower substratum to the nervous system. But in the materialistic model, the nervous system is all there is. So I use that term a lot. It's much more subtle what's going on underneath the underneath the covers, as it were. So when you think about the nervous system, you simply think about the functioning of life that creates automatic, repetitive behaviors to respond to the environment with the express intent of keeping it safe, keeping it together, keeping body and soul together. That's what it does. From the moment it's born, it is monitoring and mapping the territory that it's in, for how to survive in the world, how to get what it needs, affection and love, of course, but also food and shelter and just basic survival stuff. And of course, love and affection isn't nearly as important as survival. So it'll try to survive even if it's in an abusive household or something like that. Later on, what happens is, as consciousness emerges, it projects upon the nervous system the sense I am. And so now what is nothing but the energy system interacting in predictable ways, and automatic ways with the environment, now gets imbued with a sense of self. That's the birth of the egoic mind, and that is the cause. That's the beginning of all suffering. So when an awakening takes place, when you begin to realize that you are not what you think you are, maybe even have a deep insight that you are in fact pure consciousness and not the body, the nervous system is still doing what it did before. So this is a big point of confusion for so many people, that, well, I saw the oneness, I saw God, I was there, it was like perfectly wonderful, and but then all of a sudden the next day I'm like angry at people, I'm yelling at the person in the grocery store, and I must not have gotten it. And of course that's not the case at all. It's that the insight, the depth of vision, it always starts with vision. When you see what the truth is, it starts as a vision, but then comes the job, that's the Vedanta side of it. Then comes the Tantra part of it, is letting this vision sink into the entire nervous system. And the nervous system, which has been formatted and programmed to defend and then kind of stabilized by the sense of identity, right, now has to begin to lose the defensive posture and reorganize around a completely different sense of self. That doesn't happen overnight. And so it's still operating on a certain, it's like, it's like a computer program. It's mindless. It's not sentient. It's just doing what it was programmed to do. And our job is to basically be very patient, be very loving, creating a different environment in which it will do what it was designed to do. And that is create behaviors that respond to the environment. So if you present this, the image of oneness becomes it begins to sink into you, that image of oneness will create an environment of safety that the nervous system will then begin to respond to. It'll begin to drop defensive behaviors. It'll begin to drop the assumption that it is this body-mind. The ego will begin to dissolve out of the patterns of the nervous system. And the truth of you, the reality that you've seen and is growing, will begin to become a lived experience. The word will be made flesh. The God will come to earth. Heaven will come to earth, and that's how it happens. So understanding the nature of the nervous system is the key to really opening yourself up for the full living experience of who you really are. And so does that answer it for you, Kamal? That would be that's one of the most succinct ways I think I've ever put it. So Maya says, thanks for suffering criteria in understanding these notions and for being more polite than Buddha. Yeah, he could just like sit there and not say a word. You know, he was willing to do that. I just wonder what it'd been like if he was here now. I do know. I've met a living Buddha, and that was Muji. He'd be on YouTube, just telling jokes and telling stories and inviting people into this kind of inquiry with the expanding heart. Yeah. So I think I'm pretty sure Buddha would have a really large YouTube following. Let's see, Clay Sue. Feeling that this is all wonderful and it is all magic that I've been privileged to be in. Yay. Have to do what Harrison Klein taught me to do. Be grateful. Yeah. It's gratitude when it is something that arises very naturally when we really begin to appreciate the wonder, the mystery, the miracle that is around us every single moment. That seeing is gratitude. It evokes the feeling of gratitude. It's like, wow, this is amazing. And we just kind of pass by it. We don't stop and look. Like I told you about, this cup. Yeah, it's a cup of tea, no good. And that's fine. Right? But then stop. I mean, somewhere along the line, we got the idea to, that we could contain water. We didn't just use our hands. We actually built these little tools. And then over thousands of years, tens, hundreds of thousands of years, it's kind of matured, gotten into this stuff. And we have these processes and all the different kinds of materials and the different processes where, people had thought of and the different kind of materials people had discovered, and they all got put into this, into this particular shape. And, even got a little logo printed on the side that somebody created, and there was an artist there, and they came up with the name of this winery, and somebody invented the ink and the process by which to put it onto the cup. And of course, let's not forget the tea that's inside of it. In this particular case, it's Earl Grey with some raw honey. And somebody came up with that tea and named it, put it in bags. I mean, really, when you stop and look at the incredibly rich and complex and just the sheer number of things that have to come together in a single moment for something as simple as me taking a sip of tea from this cup. As you begin to see that, you will be in awe all the time. You will be grateful all the time. You will understand the mystery. And understand doesn't mean there's no more mystery. It's understanding that you'll never understand the mystery. That's the point. It's a mystery. And we'll go on explaining it. We'll go on discovering things and then just be blown away by, no matter what we discover, no matter how incredible it is, there's still more. Just completely beyond. The nature of reality is completely mysterious. The universe is not just more mysterious than you suppose. It is more mysterious than you're even capable of supposing. Our wildest imagination of the nature of the universe is nothing compared to what it actually is. The mystery is the nature of eternity, and it is where we will be living forever. So we'll be discovering these things, and a year from now discovering new things, and 1,000 years from now new things, and on and on and on, because the nature of the universe and the forms it can produce is inexhaustible. That to me is the power of wow. That is the power of gratitude. That's the kind of seeing that says, oh my God, and just stops us in our track. And if more of us, that happened to more of us, believe me, the problems the world is facing would simply vanish, because they're all coming from this narrow, petty, egoic view. And one that is so objectified and commoditized things that it can no longer see beauty and complexity and richness and vastness, and is so arrogant as to think it actually understands it. So thank you, Clasio. And yeah, Harrison, I talked to him and Marbeth the other day. Dear friend, dear friend. I missed them since I haven't been living in Miami. Laris, hello, Laris. Hello, thank you for your clear insights. I have a question for you. What is your opinion on Neville Goddard's teaching? Neville is an very interesting character. It's kind of aligned with the New Thought churches and A Course in Miracles, because he was prior to that. I don't remember when he died, but I think it was in the 70s. I think he may even have died before A Course in Miracles came out. And he was just somebody who had so much conviction that he pretty much could manifest whatever he wanted, because his belief in it was that powerful. And, his particular theology that, the Holy Spirit was imagination and the like, when he was talking about things like that, I don't really agree with everything he had to say. But he had an enormously powerful and positive effect for people. I think his teachings on manifestation and are valid. I think to approach it with the same level of conviction and intensity and discipline that he did would yield the same results. I think the real problem is that we don't really dedicate ourselves thoroughly enough to anything. I mean, if you do, there's people who can manifest whatever they want. If that's the direction you want to go, then by all means go that direction. As a spiritual teacher, I caution against that, because it is a trap, and yogis and sages from ever, time immemorial, have been saying that it's not really where you want to put your energy, that manifestation is a byproduct and not an end in and of itself. It's kind of the wake on the boat. You don't get into a boat to make a wake. You get into a boat to go somewhere. But the process of going somewhere, you're going to create a wake. Manifestation is the wake that gets created. So on that level, I would disagree with this approach. But all in all, it's quite valid. I know people who study it and are really into it. I love the fact that he was a maverick. His own publishers said the stuff he was talking about later, his publisher said, you can't do that. You're going to lose your audience. He says, I don't care. This is the truth. So the enormous integrity there as well. So if you had some specific thing about his teaching you'd like to ask about, I can mention it, but I can comment on it. But I never criticize any other teachers, especially by name. I mean, a certain class of teaching I will go, I don't think that's kind of the direction to go. But I also look for the good and the valuable in all of it, because there is good and valuable in all of it. And, the idea is for us to sort out ourselves and come to our own understanding of what is the most important thing for ourselves. And that's a kind of an inner inquiry that is what I'm most interested in offering up, so that you can sort all this stuff out and see for yourself and become an authority in your own right. So hope that's helpful, Laris. Celia says, thank you so much. You're very, very welcome. Let's see. Popcorn Mask in an 84. Hey, G, what's the subject? Hi from Sweden, by the way. Hi. Subject is whatever you want it to be. Popinly says, Swamiji, ha ha ha. Swamiji, yeah, it's funny, yeah, being that anyway. I see a lot. Non-duality is so easy, says Torrance Garden. Yes, it is. The only thing that's hard about it is that it is completely different from the way we've been taught to think, and in addition to, because even that is relatively easy. The real hard part, is that we're taught to not trust our own experience. We're not taught to trust our own authority about the nature of our experience. And who's a better authority on life than you are, because you're life. I mean, really, I mean, what more access, what better laboratory do you need? But because we're taught to always defer to others, non-duality seems like it's difficult. It's not, because it is the nature of things. It's the Tao. Vicky says, could you please, at the end, give us a brief exercise on unconditional love? Remind me as we get to the end. Papinu says, so why is it so elusive to go internal instead of external? Elusive to go internal. Conditioning, that's all. We've always been taught to manipulate this. Something goes wrong, the first thing I do is try to make circumstances different. And to go internally, it's not internal as opposed to external. It is the flow between the two. I mean, if my car has a flat tire, I don't sit there and ponder the energy that brought a flat tire about. I just fix the damn tire and go about my business. But if I keep getting flat tires, I'm going to keep fixing them. I'm going to, well, what's going on here? Yeah, time to go inside, look at my own energy and the like. But we've been conditioned to focus attention externally. That's the only reason why it's elusive. It's the only reason why it's difficult. The more you begin to see the direct correlation between what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, and in Reconciliation, I have a series of meditations that I call the undivided attention. And I even did a walking meditation with undivided attention at the retreat. So you can begin to experience the external and the internal simultaneously. That division doesn't happen. And it becomes a very different way of moving through the world. So that answers that. Juan says unconditional love nourishes us. Yes, unconditional love is what we're all craving. And Vicky, yes, please at the end, give us a brief exercise on unconditional love. Sure, be happy to do that. Although you can go to the Yoga of Allowing. You get my at innerreconciliation.com I do an intro video about inner reconciliation. There's an exercise there. I think you can, if you get that, you can get the whole Yoga of Allowing audio course for like $7. And I've got a lot of it in there. So that's a way to do it, because that's where it all starts. It all starts with simply being present with the body without an agenda to change anything. And then you find how the mind is always wanting, rejecting this, and I don't like this, resisting it. But little by little, you begin to see this functioning. This is the way the mind functions, but you don't identify with it. You just let that happen, and it becomes quiet too. That's really the way it works. Popcorn mask. I see a lot of teachings about love, but I find it hard to anyone who define it. Why is that? Well, it's how do you define music? Ask somebody about music, all they can do is hum a tune, right? It's like, you cannot define music separate from the songs which give it expression. You can't define love. It's infinite and mysterious. You know it through the experience of it, right? And every instance of it. And it could be it can be the love of a couple for one another. It can be the love of parent to child, of siblings, of brothers and sisters, of employees. It can be the love of my work. It's a million different flavors. They're all love, all different aspects of the same thing. But this is the nature of the non-dual. When you realize that the essence, the essence from which all form is arising is inexplicable. It's ineffable. Ineffable. Oops, I just knocked something over here. It's not something you can define because it's not an object. The forms that give expression to it, I can talk about certain songs, but I can't talk about music. Can't do it. Let's see. Space Frog is given a little promotion for Tori's Garden. Everyone should check that out. Next best to Guruji. I'll check it out myself. Torin's Garden. Nice. Okay. Free to do that here. Alan says, I normally try and stay quiet and feel great peace, but when I'm tired, I don't feel like talking and feel like I'm damaging relationships. Well, if you're in an intimate relationship, yeah, there's a need for both sides of the relationship to be clear about where they are and how they're doing. So, I'm tired, honey, it's not you. I'm just really tired and I can't really think very clearly. So and there it is. You're open, it's clean. This is what's happening. So there's no room for a misinterpretation of it. That's what damages the relationships. The lack of communication that gets left open for interpretations. And when the interpretation comes, it's going to be unhandled material, right? From the past, it's going to project upon a very innocent moment, a quality and a character that it doesn't actually possess. The remedy, communicate. This is especially more difficult for men because we tend to kind of want to just kind of keep to ourselves. But if you're in a relationship with anyone, male or female, communicate. Even when you don't feel like communicating, I don't feel like communicating. So you don't leave these gaps where the nasty stuff can creep in. Then when they do creep in, as they inevitably do, if you communicate, you have a beautiful forum with which you can explore the various kinds of triggers that happen, which means that a really high quality romantic relationship is capable of providing the setting in which the deep childhood issues can actually be resolved and be healed. So Ali says, thank you for the reply. At times I wish I can have my, excuse my French, fuck it moment. You know what I mean? Oh, absolutely. There's actually a book written, Fuck It, the great spiritual practice. And it is a great spiritual practice. Anyway, I want something inside my head to click and tell myself enough is enough. I know how to run an internet business. I know about branding and I'm good with the quality of content I put out, but for some reason I just don't finish or hold off on a project I just endured. I experienced that myself, Ali. I mean, I do this for a living. I have products that I sell on the internet. I do live classes and live retreats and the like. So it's kind of part of the thing. And I've had to come to terms with the parts. I just have no desire to do it. And I'm finding people are kind of stepping up to help me, to kind of take over the things that I don't really know how to do. But there's, I have to come to terms with the fact that there's some things I don't want to do, and just make it possible for yourself to do it. And if it really is impossible, then get yourself some help to dive into that so that it is. And, it could be something very deep, like you really want a different direction to go in life, or it could be something like, I'm afraid of failing, so I can hold off on this. I don't, I can't diagnose it here and now, but just really, you don't need to have the fuck it mantra. What I always recommend is a real gentle, compassionate willingness to be present with yourself and really let yourself experience yourself fully, so that it's okay if you don't want to do something. It's perfectly okay. There's a tendency of us to, oh, I don't want to do something, I got to do it. And we create the conflict. So I don't really want to do it. I'm really going to allow myself to not want to do it. And I'm going to allow myself to do it even though I don't want to. So, shout out who you're talking about. So I hope that answers it for you. B. Harper says, can you shout out who you are talking about? I had to step out. I'm not sure when you stepped out, B. Oh, Swamiji also says. Maybe it was Neville Goddard. Could have been Buddha. Larisse says, a specific thing from Neville I am interested in. You pushed out idea, and thank you for your opinion. Is the you pushed out idea. I'm not sure I'm familiar. I haven't heard it put in those terms. So I may need a little bit more to help you with that, Larisse. Space Frog Dick Baby says, Guruji, I missed my question, dude. Sorry, buddy. Let me scroll back here. And well, actually, about Muji's invitation. Oh yeah, I totally missed that. Whoa. They go by kind of fast. All right, let me see if I can find it. I'm not gonna overshoot something. Any question about Muji, I really want to get to. Okay, where's Space Frog? Where are you, Space Frog? Can you do me a favor and type it in again? I'm scrolling back, and I can't find it. I'm pretty sure, yeah, nothing gets deleted, but I'm not finding it, my friend. So could you just put it in there? It's about the invitation. What about the invitation you want to? Do you want me to talk about? Yeah, I'd be happy to. CB says, do you meditate daily? And if so, can you talk about what method you use? Yes, but it's at this point, it's no particular method. I always invite people to, the best meditation is the meditation that is simply willing to be present with whatever is happening as just the agenda-free witness of it. And I use those words carefully because, oh, I'm going to be the witness now, which becomes a thing in and of itself. Forget the witness, just be witnessing. Now, you're witnessing all the time. What happens is what we witness, something pops up, but then some kind of resistance to it or some interpretation of it or some judgment of it comes up. But that needs to be included in the witnessing as well. And, sometimes the meditation will move into a deeper inquiry, and I just want to go deeper into the nature of consciousness. But my starting point for all meditation is the willingness to be present with what's happening in this moment without trying to change it, and to just be the witnessing present. Don't use the term observer or witness because they've kind of started to take on a meaning in and of itself. You are right now witnessing, are you not? You're hearing my words. That's the witnessing. So the perceiving is always happening. The knowing is always going on. So now just be with that knowing. Notice that you're knowing, and notice how everything being known is known by this knowing, this perceiving. Don't even give it a name as a perceiver, myself, any of that. Just notice that it's happening. And that even a resistance to some particular thought, or the mind starting a story or a narrative about the thought, is also being perceived simultaneously. Now you are in a pure state of witnessing presence. And then that's, to me, is the fundamental meditation. Everything else actually is more of a form of concentration. That's actual meditation. And that little by little, you can turn more and more attention on the witnessing or the perceiving itself. And that's when you just really begin to fold back. And it's the environment in which the self can reveal itself as itself. B. Harbor says, talk and Can you shout out talk and method? Oh, right. Does that answer your question, B Harper? Chosen one. Damn you. I know I'm late, GP. Well, at least one question. Are you familiar with sapien medicine, subliminal, and frequency videos? No, I'm not. Medicine, subliminal, and frequency videos. No, I'm not. I am familiar with, different forms of brain entrainment, audio and the like, as well as subliminal messaging and that sort of stuff. And they are effective. The I Awake guy, John Dupuy, I think is how you pronounce his name. It's a friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine, who produces very high quality stuff. I'm not anything you use in the process of your spiritual growth is fine, as long as you recognize that that everything is temporary, and that there's no such thing that is the ultimate teaching or the ultimate technique. If you have that in mind, there's an openness and a spaciousness, and that means you can use whatever is available to you. You have the freedom to use whatever means are available to you for your spiritual growth, knowing full well that you will eventually outgrow those and come to the ultimate. And the ultimate, of course, when there's no more need for spiritual growth, you have the fully awakening. Chosen one said, I tried his tanning video 3 times a day, was in winter and amazing. I got darker skin. Yep. I suppose there are some decent subliminal makers. Yes. Yeah. The mind creates everything. If I believe myself I'm going to get tan, I'm going to. If I believe by going out in the sun to get a tan, I get a tan, I will. Now, it's universally believed. We all believe the same thing. And so we think it's actually some characteristic of the sun. It's not. It's a characteristic of belief. And when you do something like this, where you can actually do some subliminal stuff, put stuff in your head, and actually have a physical effect like that, the fact that you got the tan in the middle of winter, the subliminal stuff is interesting. What's really interesting is, well, what the hell is mind if all I have to do is think something and the physical effect? To me, that becomes an existential thing now. So, wow, what is the nature of reality? Well, Buddha will tell you the nature of reality is mind. The universe is mind. The universe didn't create mind. Mind and the universe are actually one. The experience that we call the universe is the mind. And our beliefs about it is what we experience as everyday life. And it's only our belief, period. Celia Rose said, I think Larisse was asking about Neville's everything is you pushed out idea. Ah, yes. Okay. Mirror how you feel inside. By the way, does EFT tapping work or good for the body? Oh, 2 questions in one. Yes, from that point, everything is you pushed out. I totally agree. I teach it as the law of reflection. Yes, it is not out there being brought to you. It is in here being expressed outwardly. So on that level, Neville and I are like brothers. Does EFT tapping work? Yes. Is it good for the body? Absolutely. Yeah, I highly recommend it. I teach it to my facilitators. I even did a little bit of it by request at the retreat on the weekend, and actually had a really great effect, especially with somebody who it kind of broke down some defenses that had been there. So yes, it's extremely effective. I highly recommend it. B. Harbour says, lovely. Always think I'm doing it wrong. Yeah, that's what. Now notice that, yes, that's the mind does, because the mind is always, well, it's got to be a certain kind of way and this kind of results, right? But notice that you're aware of that too. You're perceiving that too. And as long as I'm doing it wrong, as long as you realize that it's just a thought, and the thought, that I, isn't talking about you, that voice in your head isn't actually you, it is the robot, is the programmed responses, then boom, you got it. You just watch it happen, and it will eventually not be have the least bit of influence on you. Space Frog Dig Baby, too many characters I see do not come up, and it was a long question. I shall continue. I am. Okay, the one about the invitation. Whoa, what happened? Suddenly got tired. Oh, I need water. That's what it is. It's going on what? Oh, it's going on 2 hours. Wow. Finish my tea, finish my water. Almost 3 o'clock here, where I am in beautiful Seattle, Washington. Vicky says, how is Evan? We have not seen him for a while now. Say hi. This is me reminding you about the exercise. Thank you. Thank you very much. Evan is doing wonderfully. He's been out of town quite a bit lately, but he's in on the class, the coaching calls that I do for the subscribers, and he's in on the weekly calls for the facilitators. So he just hasn't been putting out as much material on the like, but he's still very much involved. And if you're in the Facebook group, he's in there all the time making comments. He's in there way more than I am. So, so you're welcome, and thank you again for the reminder. I will. Let me just put it out there because I just really described it. The unconditional love, in the most practical sense, is simply unconditional acceptance, right? If you want to experience unconditional love as an exercise, you simply put yourself in the place where you are allowing things to be as they are. If I have a feeling, I don't resist the feeling or fight it. I just, this feeling is there. I'm angry. I'm feeling angry. Okay. Anger has permission to be here. Sorry, somebody just sent me a private message. If I'm feeling lonely, I let it be there. Notice that when what we call negative emotions come up, we want to push them away. We want to kind of force them down, right? Which means you're not being accepting. Most people, unconditional love, it's kind of like this idea that it bathes everything in love and everything looks lovable and everything's beautiful. No, it's not that at all. It's unconditional love is accepting things unconditionally, no matter what shape they're in, no matter how many warts they have, no matter how messed up they might appear, no matter how dirty and grimy it might get. That's to be in a state of total acceptance, which is unconditional love. So the exercise is very simple. You just start putting your attention on your body, feeling the body, and just feel whatever the body happens to be feeling. If there's a tension somewhere, you just, okay, there's a tension there. If it's uncomfortable in some way, just let yourself scan and just notice what's there. And then you'll notice that there'll be some kind of feeling of tension or something, and the mind will want to create a story. And that story will have in it the essence of resistance, or I'm not accepting it. I want it to be different. Just notice that and bring your attention back to the feeling and just let the feeling be there. And then you'll notice, and this is the beauty of the exercise, that you, as that witnessing awareness, don't have any resistance to it. It is acceptable to you. It is okay the way it is. And that the resistance and the rejection of it is all just the egoic mind. And then you realize that you are by nature unconditional love. And that's the way to take this exercise. So there you go, Vicky. That should handle it for you. Chosen one, meditation is amazing. Hands down, the best thing we can do for ourselves, and it is always successful. Amen to that. B. Harper says, you are a gentle soul. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very sweet. Thank you. Juan says, GP, you are awesome, man. I do enjoy listening to your satsangs. I have to go now. All right, Juan. Thank you, my friend. Space Frog, Dig Baby. What a name. That's great. My question continued. Basically, Mooji brings you to a place which is awareness. Then he says, does it have a color? Can it die, etc.? I find the questions misleading. Do you know it? And can you clarify? Yeah, what he's doing is when you get to this place of pure awareness, he wants you to explore it. He doesn't want you to just, sit there and accept it as a concept. Remember, before the invitation happened, before he started doing that, it happened very spontaneously in India. two years ago. It was all just, it was very much Vedanta, you know, the direct path of inquiry. But now but he hasn't thrown that aside. He puts them together so that you can discover for yourself, okay, I've put aside the past, the future, all the ideas I have about myself, you know, expectations of the next moment, even enlightenment, awakening. I've put all of that aside and I'm just experiencing the presence of being. It's nothing extra added. And now he invites you to explore that presence. Can you find a boundary to that presence? If you're not thinking of the past, if you're not conceptualizing it, if you're not imagining something, if you're just looking at the pure experience of your being, does it have a boundary? Can you, by looking directly at it, find a beginning to it or an ending to it? Can you find a gender? Does it have preference for one thing over another? Does it have a religion? Is it born? Is it going to die? So he's inviting you into to begin to explore this so that you continue to put the conceptual mind to the side and just look at the direct experience of yourself as you are, and to see that, oh my God, I cannot find an end to myself. I cannot find a beginning. I seem to be formless. I don't seem to have a gender. I don't seem to have a body. I'm just this awareness. That's what he's attempting to do there. And, you know, it's amazing. I do it all the time. Clarify. Okay. And then Helen says, interesting how many times I've wanted to get up and do something during the satsang, avoiding what I'm hearing, fear of what I might hear. But hey, it's up and okay. Yep, the mind does not like this. Mind may not even like me. But that's okay. Just, there it is. It's okay. You know, it's just trying to protect itself. It's quite all right. Pam says, thanks, GP. This has been great. Got to go. Bye-bye. My friends in Europe, which are like 8 hours ahead of me now, are having to drop off. SS says, yes, beautiful satsang today. Thank you, G. You're welcome. Space Frog Dig Baby says, question finalized. Can you see the place in awareness that is eternal? And how does one know without having a non-dual awakening? Would you claim to be able to show you this? Thanks. Right. Yeah, I mean, just keep going back to what is the actual experience itself, because that is non-dual. When you are just experiencing yourself, feeling your own beingness without any concepts, that's true non-duality. Non-duality isn't a philosophical thing about oneness and all that. It is the direct experience of yourself as pure awareness. And then exploring that pure awareness, which is exploring yourself to find out if you were born, if you are going to die. And drawing this conclusion, not by looking at time and ideas, because you'll get no answer there. We won't, you know, if you try to refer to, you know, just thoughts and time about whether or not you're going to die, you're going to have to wait till you die to find out if you're still there. And which means you're, you know, the only way you're ever going to know is if you continue after death, because if you don't, well, boom, oblivion, nothing there at all. So if we're going to be able to answer that question, as the sages tell us we can, there's something in our relationship with this moment right now that should indicate to us our own eternality. And that's what he's pointing you to. The experience of beingness itself. Does that experience feel like it had a beginning or an end? When you really feel into it, you find, no, it doesn't. I have to think about it in order to come up with some model of time as it's going to exist then, did it exist before that. But my experience of it is that it is formless, that it is eternal, that it is endless, it has no beginning, has no end. and then begin to trust my experience more than my beliefs and the beliefs of others. Does that do it for you, Space Frog? Dig Baby. Sorry, you so eloquently and excellently answered my question after I asked the final question. Thank you so much. My Guru G, love, Space Frog X. Thank you. Thank you, Space Frog. And I love that name. That's the best. Vicky says, thanks very much. You're the best. Shanti. Oh, Shanti. Does the body-mind have its own destiny? In light of Nisargadatta and Ramana's bodies dying with cancer, do we allow cancer? Much love and gratitude. Whew, that's a very, very big, it's a very, very big question. And it doesn't lend itself to a simple answer. I mean, Nisargadatta made the comment that he said after his enlightenment, he said, I let my human life fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am. The answer to that question lies in coming to understand the nature of your own being. When you understand who you are, then you understand that the flow of life is the flow of life, and it has its destiny and its thing that it's going to be doing. Now, that doesn't mean that you as an awakened being aren't going to affect that destiny, because it's a completely different energy that is going to be present there. So it's not like it's this predestined thing. It isn't like that at all. But at the same time, in the awakened mind, there's no need to make things different, to make things, to change things. They can change. Lots of things changed around the Buddha, but we don't hear much about the miracles, but there were just innumerable ones that happened. Same around Nisargadatta and Ramana. I mean, they focused on the miracles of Christ to give him a special otherworldliness, but it's characteristic of the sages that those things happen. But what's also characteristic is that there's not a concern about their body. So they don't see the need to make it any different than it is. You might say, oh, you know, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to change the body to be something else. That's kind of the short answer of it, to it. So do we allow cancer? I would say one has to come to an allowing of the circumstances as they are with no resistance. And that reveals an energetic pattern that's going on in that moment. And that energetic pattern may need to fulfill itself, or it may just completely dissolve and be healed. And so your job is to go beneath the symptoms that we call cancer, the stuff that's appearing in the body, to the energy that's underneath it, without an agenda to fix it or heal it, but to just be present with it. And you'll probably find that a lot of stuff does get healed, but that's not the intention. The intention is to know intimately, directly, lovingly, compassionately. Woo! Judy says, another awesome satsang. Many thanks to you. Thanks to you all. I'm exhausted. I'm going to get something to eat. And well, thank you all for being here. It's just always such a pleasure to be able to do this. And I hope we're doing some more stuff. I'm working with somebody now who's helping me to organize some live stuff. So I'm hoping to actually do some more live satsangs, live from New York and other places. If you were, stay tuned for all that. If you haven't registered, go to gpwalsh.com/SWG and you get on the mailing list to know when satsangs and other things are happening. Space Fox says, do you do one-on-one on Skype? The answer is yes, I do. I do that. And Helen says, good night from Spain. And thank you, GP. Namaste from TD Graphics. And the things are coming by. Thank you all. Whew, thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. It is such, it's just such an honor to be able to do this. It really is. It's, I sometimes I just have to look at my life and go, wow, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.